Hi everybody, my name's Timmy, and welcome to episode 8 of Cardano Ecosystem News. Today's episode's going to be a little different. We're going to do a deep dive on just one topic, Realfi. I want to tell you everything about Realfi, how it's different from DeFi, how it's better than regular bank lending and borrowing, and I want to tell you why I think Realfi might become one of the biggest engines for Cardano growth. None of the other blockchains are focused on Realfi, but it's actually a huge potential opportunity for us. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm super excited about it, and I want to know if you are. So that's the plan for today. Without wasting any more of your time on the intro, let's go ahead and jump on in. I'll see you on the flip side, and remember to like and subscribe so I stay alive. In our first story today, I'm going to try and demystify Realfi. We're going to compare Realfi to DeFi and compare DeFi to regular borrowing and lending that happens at banks every day. And I'm going to tell you why, in my opinion, Realfi might be the engine for 10x or 100x growth on the Cardano. More than the metaverse or some of these other trending topics, I think Realfi might be a huge opportunity for Cardano. And Cardano is way ahead of any of the other blockchains when it comes to Realfi. John O'Connor, the African Operations Director for IOHK, or Input Output Global, always talks about Realfi and Atala Prism ID, which we'll explain to you in a minute. Charles Hoskinson is regularly talking about Realfi, and you just don't see the other blockchains doing this. What are they missing? We're going to walk you through why this is a huge game changer. To do that first, though, I want to start by talking about how regular people borrow money today. If you want to borrow money today, let's say to buy a house, the bank is going to require 3 things from you. First, they're going to ask you for your social security number in order to bring up a credit score. They're going to look at your credit report, and on that credit report, it'll show where you're working, how long you've been working there, what your salary is, what your earnings history is. It'll show if you've had any other loans in the past and how well you've paid those loans. But it'll also show if you have a phone account, a mobile phone account, an internet account, a car insurance, and it'll show how well you're paying these monthly contract deals. It'll show whether you've been late on your phone payments or late on other payments that you make month to month. And this credit score gives the bank a sense for how well you are at managing money, and it gives them confidence when lending you money. The second thing they'll ask for is a deposit, and that can be maybe 5% or 10% of the purchase price of the home. If you're paying for a 200,000 euro home, they might ask for 10,000 euros just so they have some cash in case you up and disappear. But also, that 10,000 euros deposit is a signal to the bank that you're able to generate income, you have some earnings, at least enough to come up with $10,000, and so that gives them confidence that you'll be able to continue earning money to pay the monthly amount of the loan. And the third thing they're going to ask for is some paperwork as collateral that says if you just disappear and stop paying your loan back, then the bank can keep the house. Okay, so the bank has 3 things. They have a social security number with a credit report, they have a cash deposit, and they have a paperwork as collateral, which lets them take the home if you stop paying. Now, imagine that you don't have a social security number. Imagine that you don't have a credit report. How can you get money to purchase a house? How can you get money to purchase a car? If you're someone very new, someone very young, you don't have financial history, you don't have a credit report, you haven't been working, you can't get money at a bank to purchase a house. How can you loan money or borrow money in order to kickstart your career? Well, enter DeFi, decentralized finance. In DeFi, the middleman, the bankers and the brokers, the mortgage brokers, are kicked out of the equation. Instead, thousands and thousands of regular users deposit money into a liquidity pool. They'll deposit thousands and thousands of dollars until there's millions of dollars locked into this smart contract. And that millions of dollars are available for other people to come in and borrow. And now, how does that pool of money know who to lend money to? How do they know that that person's going to pay them back? How can they do this safely without getting a social security number and a credit report? Well, the way they do this is by requiring a cash deposit. And usually, they'll actually ask for a 100% deposit. Not 5% or 10%. They'll ask for 100%, sometimes even more than 100% because of market volatility. And so if you want to borrow $100,000 from this pool, first you have to deposit $100,000. That way, if you never pay back the money, they can just take your money, the deposit, and put it right back into the pool. So the smart contract, the DeFi protocol, the liquidity pool is always safe because they've got 100% deposit against the amount that you borrowed. So you might borrow $100,000. First, you'll deposit $100,000 as a collateral, borrow $100,000. You'll invest that in all kinds of cryptocurrencies and crypto tokens. Maybe you'll make $50,000 profit in a month. You can take that $50,000, put it in your pocket, the $100,000 paid back to the liquidity pool, and then your deposit money comes back to you as well. And so you end up with all of the profit. This is a way to easily borrow money to do other crypto investments, or if you need to, convert it to fiat. So that's how DeFi works. That's how DeFi avoids needing to have a credit report and a social security number or some weird paperwork collateral where you promise to give them your house. DeFi protects itself by requiring a 100% deposit. Okay, so I've showed you how mortgage and banks protect themselves. I've showed you how DeFi protects itself. Enter Realfi. What if you don't have $100,000 in order to borrow $100,000? What if you're just someone starting out, you don't have a ton of capital, but you also don't have a credit report? You haven't done any loans before. You have no way to prove your income or anything like that. In many parts of Africa, people just don't have social security numbers. They're not in the database. They don't have this huge, long history of earnings potential and earnings history, and they haven't, had a bunch of loans where they can show that they're a trustworthy borrower. So what can they do? Well, this is where Realfi comes in, and identity. The first step is to give everybody something like a social security number. Just give everybody a unique ID. And then any financial activity that person does, they can choose to attach that activity, attach that history to their ID. And so if a person gets a new job and that job has some kind of a salary, let's say 50,000 American a year, or whatever, just as an example, they can attach to their Atala Prism ID the fact that they're making $50,000 a year, and that's a data point that they have. Another example is, let's say if they decide to go to school, and let's say they graduate from college or university, they can attach their academic records and their degree of completion to their Atala Prism ID. And so now they've got another data point attached to their ID. Let's say they open up a phone account. They want to have mobile phone, or maybe they want to have home internet. They create an account, and they attach their Atala Prism ID to that account. And then they pay their bill consistently every month. They're never late. For months and months, maybe for a couple years, they're never late on their payments. They attach that payment history to their Atala Prism ID. And so you can see now that this person has started to build up lots of datums, lots of data points on their Prism ID that they can take to the bank. They can go to a bank and say, hey, look up this ID number, and you can see that I do have a job. I've been at the same job for 3 years. I make $50,000 a year. I have this degree. It's totally legit. These are my grades. This is my future earnings potential. And I have a phone account. I have an internet account, and I've paid my bill every month. This lets the bank know that this person is probably managing their finances reasonably well. Well, let's take the bank out of the picture again and come back to cryptocurrencies. If we can have an ID for someone and have the score computed in an anonymous or confidential manner, we can have confidence lending money to this person without requiring them to have a 100% deposit. So if the person is running a small corner store, let's say in Ethiopia, or maybe a mechanic shop in Kenya, they need to borrow $50,000 maybe to repair some damage from a natural disaster, or maybe they need the $50,000 to expand their business. They don't have a credit report that they can go to a bank with in their city. They don't have $50,000 that they can deposit into some kind of DeFi protocol, but they have an Atala Prism ID. And on that ID, we can see that they've paid all of their bills on time for the last few years. We can see that they've got good earnings potential based on their education. They're disciplined, and we can see that all kinds of their financial history and financial activity, whatever they've opted in to share. And we can use that to get a sense of trust, a sense of credibility in order to lend money to them. And in many cases, the yield, the interest rate that we'll be asking to lend money to this kind of person can become really attractive. Right now, interest rates in North America and Europe are 0%, 0.5%, 1%. If you borrow money for a house, it's 2%, 2.5% right now, really low. I've heard that in many parts of Africa, if they want to borrow money, they'll be paying 40%, 50%, 60%, just insane interest rates. Well, what if we could look up someone's Atala Prism ID, keep the details confidential, but get some kind of a red light, yellow light, green light score. And if it's a green, then we could lend money to them, but not asking crazy 40%, maybe 5%, maybe 10%. If it was 10% yield, that's still twice as much as what we're getting from staking. And so you could imagine a lot of people taking part of their ADA wallet funds and maybe taking 20%, whatever, and trying to lend it to someone in Kenya, lend it to someone in Tanzania, lend it to someone who has really good financial behavior and activity tied to their Prism ID, and lend it at something like 10%. The borrower will be very happy to borrow at 10% instead of 60%, or even I've heard up to 70% in their local country. So it's very attractive to the borrower, and for the lender, for the person with the ADA that they're lending, 10% yield is quite attractive as well. Now, there's some more data in this article that only about 2% of some of these loans default. Some of these small-time business loans are defaulting at only 2%. That's 1 in 50. So very, very strong, very good payment behaviors from these lenders in Kenya. IO, Input Output, has actually partnered with Positia to help facilitate loans to small and medium-sized businesses looking for short-term loans for working capital. So what this will mean is, as ADA holders, as Cardano holders, we could become lenders and lending money to people that have really good financial history on their Atala Prism ID. We can have confidence that they're going to be able to pay it back, and we can potentially get pretty good yield, much better than 2% or 3% that the big banks are paying, and even better than the 5% that you get from staking. And so I just think this is absolutely amazing that we could start to really improve equity and fairness and inclusivity to allow these people in in Africa and other parts of the world to borrow money without paying huge 50% plus interest fees. And at the same time, we can have confidence lending the money because of real identity, because of Realfi. And get pretty good yields. And so to me, this looks like a win-win opportunity that I think could really transform Cardano, transform blockchain, and just be really, really cool engine for growth and for changing the world. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Any questions that you have around Realfi? What do you think about Realfi? Do you think this can be as big as I do? I am really excited for this.